Hello, welcome to week 6 of 5225. We're talking about uh, films with Oscar-winning performances. Uh, this one, I know last time I promised that I had claimed that it was going to be a short episode, and then it ended up being like something like 40 minutes. This one for sure has to be, because it has to be. I actually don't have the time to go much longer. So today I'm just going to mostly talk about the performances in the movies that I'm covering. I only watched 4 movies. One of them was a first time watch, as promised most of the time. The first one is a movie that I really love from 1997 called As Good as It Gets. It won Best Actor Jack Nicholson and Best Actress Helen Hunt. It's kind of a funny story about how I first saw this movie. One of my ex-stepdad's cousin, no, his brother-in-law. It was his brother-in-law. Got my sister and I some VHS tapes for Christmas. He got As Good as It Gets for me. It was 1997, so I was a teenager. I'm not the key demographic, but I at least was I was already a burgeoning cinephile at the time, so that one was not so bad. Got my sister a Godzilla film, and not the American Godzilla, like a Japanese Godzilla film, which she had no interest in. Which, I had some interest in, but I really wanted the movie that he got me, and being not a very good brother at the time, did not agree to the switch that she had proposed. But so anyway, I watched it and I absolutely fell in love with this movie back in 1997. 1998 probably is when I watched it, but I absolutely fell in love with As Good as It Gets. If you don't know, As Good as It Gets is about a curmudgeonly old writer played by Jack Nicholson. He's racist, he's homophobic, he's just not a very good person. He's also got OCD, so his routine is very, very important to him. In fact, he lives by that routine. He goes to the same restaurant every day for breakfast. He sits in the same section, and he needs to be waited on by the same waitress. And suddenly his life starts to get disrupted. His routine starts to get disrupted by all these different things that happen in his life. His gay neighbor gets attacked. His neighbor is an artist, gets attacked by one of the people that he's drawing. Yes, he's drawing him. One of his models, his art model. And so Jack Nicholson has to start taking care of his dog. Then his waitress has a sick child, and so she has to stop working at the restaurant. Well, he's a successful writer, so he decides to get her a live-in dog, not a live-in doctor, but a doctor who will come to her house and actually take care of her, which actually ends up being a really good commentary on the state of our health care system, which sadly is not only still bad, but probably worse today than it was back then. But let me talk about the performances. Jack Nicholson, who plays Melvin Udall, portrays the exact grumpy old manness that we need for this character. As I mentioned before, Melvin is racist. He's homophobic. He's just generally grumpy and not very nice to people. And, today we rightfully condemn those type of people and condemn those type of characters. I mean, we condemned them back then, but it was a lot easier back then, I think, to accept that person as the protagonist. I think today it would be a little bit harder, especially if we're not seeing the results of their redemption very quickly, which you don't really see them in this. I mean, yes, he starts taking care of the dog and he starts to fall in love with the dog, but he's still mean to people, and there's a lot of things that he still maintains from his previous from his previous demeanor. When going into a character like this, it's very, very interesting because, as I mentioned, it's not something you would see today very much, because we are a lot more mindful of kind of the heroes that we're putting on TV most of the time, or in movies most of the time. I think this is something that we don't do often enough actually now, which is these flawed protagonists that uh, don't necessarily learn all of their lessons by the end, but do show signs of growth and change, because that's really what you want, because that's more realistic. It's very unlikely a real person in real life is going to change overnight. It's going to change as quickly as one would expect them to in a film, but it's far more realistic and more true to life to have a character who begins to grow, begins to change, who shows signs that they are becoming a better person. There's a quote in this movie that Greg Kinnear's character, which is the gay neighbor Simon Bishop, says when he's talking to his model about how his process for drawing, and that, or for doing the art. And he says that he likes to watch. He just watches people, and at some point, basically their position that they are in is going to speak to him, and he's going to say stop, and that you need to stay right there, and this is the thing I'm going to capture. The quote that he uses is, if you look at someone long enough, you discover their humanity, which is exactly what happens with Melvin Udall in this movie. And that's where I think Jack Nicholson really, really shines, because he plays this character who is not likable. I mean, he's likable in that Jack Nicholson is playing him, so it's easy to root for his redemption or to root for him to go on. And it's easy to laugh at him when he's being, not a good person. It's easy to be entertained by this character because Jack Nicholson is playing them, and he's an entertaining actor. He's a very good actor. But as this movie goes on, you're watching Jack Nicholson's character, Melvin Udall, go through all of these changes in his life and go through these things and fall in love with this woman and befriend this man who he used to call slurs. And now he's starting to see who this person is, who this person actually is, because it's not just Melvin that we're looking at long enough to see their humanity. It's Melvin who's looking at Simon to see his humanity. It's Melvin who's looking at Carol, played by Helen Hunt, to see her humanity. He's looking at these people long enough to discover that they are not just characters that in his day. They are not just the people he has to interact with in order to get through. They are people, period, full stop. They are people. He discovers that they are people who deserve his respect, who deserve him to change for. And he even has a really great line: "You make me want to be a better man," because as he's looking at these people, he's discovering their humanity, and that's where Jack Nicholson really, really shines. Is that he's entertaining early on when we need him to be this grumpy man who isn't very nice. But as he starts to learn and grow, we see that learning and growing. But we also see the discomfort in between. He's completely believable as this person who's not always getting it and who's not always comfortable with what is happening in his life. So this performance, I think, I love this win for Jack Nicholson, because I love this movie, but also just because I think that Jack Nicholson absolutely deserved the award for it. The people that he beat for this award were Matt Damon for Good Will Hunting, which is a great performance. Robert Duvall for The Apostle, which I think is also a really good performance. I haven't actually seen it since it came out, but I do remember being a really good performance. Peter Fonda for Yuli's Gold. I haven't seen it. And Dustin Hoffman for Wag the Dog, which is also a good performance, but doesn't really touch Jack Nicholson, in my opinion. I think the closest is going to be Matt Damon. But I still think that the right call was made. Sorry, Stacy, my friend Stacy, who loves Matt Damon. I'm sorry. I think Jack Nicholson did win this award fair and square. But that brings me to Helen Hunt, who I think is probably a bit of today we would look at it a bit of as a controversial win, just because she was up against some heavy hitters, and one heavy hitter in particular. She was up against Helena Bonham Carter for Wings of the Dove, Julie Christie for Afterglow, Judi Dench for Mrs. Brown, and this is the big one, Kate Winslet for Titanic. And now I think that if Kate Winslet had won, I would be completely fine with it. I think that it is that I would have called that the right call, and I would have been 100% okay with it. because she absolutely deserved to win. But I also think that Helen Hunt deserved this win. It's not controversial to me. I think that she plays this mother, this stressed out mother and waitress and woman who is trying to navigate her life with all of these different problems. One of them being her being a single mother with an ill child, and also trying to think, can I move on with my life? Can I date people? Can I actually go to work, or do I have to stay home with my son? Can I do these things? And she goes on this like emotional journey, and you can see it the entire time. She plays it to absolute perfection, in my opinion. And again, it's a lot of it is that I really, really love this movie. I love Titanic also, but for me, As Good as It Gets was my favorite film of 1997. But Titanic, never going to complain that it won Best Picture. I'm also never going to complain that As Good as It Gets won Best Actress, because I think she does a solid. I think she plays that role that she is supposed to play to perfection. She absolutely nails it. The second film I watched was 2008's Milk, based on the Times of Harvey Milk. It's a true story about a politician named Harvey Milk, a gay politician who was assassinated. I mean, you learn that early on. This is something that you learn at the very beginning of the movie, and it's just kind of showing his life, how he got to that point where he was assassinated. Harvey Milk was a hero. I had known about him before watching this movie, but this movie really shed some light on all of the things that he had done for the queer community. As a queer man, I look at him as someone who fought for us before I was even born, really. But in order for me to come out and be able to tell you this here today, we have to thank people like Harvey Milk. But let's get into the performance here. This film won the Academy Award for Best Actor for Sean Penn, who plays Harvey Milk in the film. You know, we have a lot of conversations today about whether or not a straight person should be able to play a queer character, and if that takes something away from it, or if we need to give these roles to queer people. And I think for the most part, yes, we need to start letting queer people play queer roles. I don't think that means, as a queer man, I will say, I don't think that means that every queer role has to be played by a queer person. Number one, that forces people to go public with their sexuality, and whether they're gay, straight, or in whatever, that should not be a requirement for a job. That's just a fact. That should never be a requirement. Supposing some of these actors who often play gay are gay, but they are not comfortable coming out to the public yet. I mean, that should not be a requirement for a job. I think that we should endeavor to cast openly gay and queer characters, trans characters in those roles. I think, especially for trans characters, it's important that we cast trans actors in those roles. But as far as for a role like this where he's playing a gay man, I do not think that it is a requirement, because no person should be forced to reveal their sexuality to get a job. That's just how I feel. We've got that out of the way. Let's talk about Sean Penn as Harvey Milk. I think he fully embodies this character. As I've seen clips of Harvey Milk in it doing, being himself, going to his campaigns. I'm Harvey Milk and I want to recruit you. That thing, like, Sean Penn just embodies this guy so well. I've seen a lot of really great Sean Penn performances. I've seen a lot of really understated Sean Penn performances that weren't necessarily up my alley. But I think that this is probably his best performance. I think this is probably I'm glad that he won an Oscar for this one, because this was his best. He completely, as I mentioned, embodies this character, but he does it with such reverence and respect. You never feel like he is lampooning anything. You never feel like he is painting a caricature of this character. He is just a man. He is playing a gay man. I think it helps with the question about if a gay man should, or if a straight man should be able to play a gay character, something like this. I think a lot of it does help with who is the other side of the creative team. In this case, it's Gus Van Sant, who's a great director who I really love, is a gay man. And I think that especially if he is behind it and he's making these choices, as long as he's not mandated, you have to pick this straight actor because no one will watch a gay actor or anything, something like that. As long as he is making these choices and he is comfortable with it, for what I understand, he very much was. I think that it's important for a queer filmmaker to be able to tell the best version of the story, at least in their opinion, the best version of a story like this. And so for that reason, also, I think that the right choice was made here with Sean Penn, because a queer director needed this to make his movie happen, to make his art what he wanted. Sean Penn won for Best Actor against Richard Jenkins for The Visitor, which is an incredible performance. It's one that I very much love. I will say already out of the gate here, this would probably be my runner up. Frank Langella for Frost Nixon, Brad Pitt for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and Mickey Rourke for The Wrestler. In this case, I think that the Academy got it right on this one. Again, I think that out of those, this would be where I threw my vote as well. So I think that they absolutely got it right. And I'm glad that Sean Penn played this role, and I'm glad that he gave it so much respect and was rewarded for it in the end. The third film I watched is one that it's going to be a little controversial, this thing, because I know that there is division. It's a little bit divisive. I think that we're going to have a range of opinions on it. If you have different opinions than me, please let me know in the comments. But also know I'm okay with the choices I've made here. So we're going to talk about Best Supporting Actress Anne Hathaway for Les Misérables from 2012. In Les Misérables, she plays Fantine, a factory worker who is forced into prostitution after she is fired from the factory job. And she does that in order to be able to send money to her daughter, because she does have a daughter. And eventually she does die doing this, trying to provide for her daughter. Now, she is in this movie for a very short amount of time. I believe 12 minutes out of, I think it's a 3-hour movie, like a 3-hour runtime. It's not very much of the movie, which we've seen other performers and well acclaimed performances that have been in for less time or a short amount of time as well. But this one seems to get a lot of hate. I think number one is because people don't really like the movie. I do like the movie. I think that it is a very well staged production of a really great stage musical. I think that it's almost as good as you can probably do. I think that maybe there is a different version out there, or there is a potential different version out there that might be better, but I just don't think that you're going to do much better than that. I know a lot of people, one of the big criticisms of Russell Crowe. I understand. I don't have a problem with it. Everybody kind of sounds bad when they're doing the sing talking early on in the movie. I think when he's actually doing this thing, it works for me, because Javert has always felt like the kind of the rock character, even if his character doesn't sing necessarily with a rock, doesn't sing rock and roll. I've always felt like he's more of the metal character, and so getting a person who is actually in a rock band, Russell Crowe, to play him and with his voice, I felt like that fit the character in this movie. But I understand why people don't like it. It just doesn't bother me very much. But let's get to Anne Hathaway real quick, because Anne Hathaway's performance, I think, is incredible. Every second she's on screen is amazing, and I think that she deserves it throughout. But when she's singing that song, I Dreamed a Dream, right up here, you're right here and you're close. And this is one of the things that people complain about, is like, well, they had them sing all of it on the day and didn't pre-record it and have them go off of the actual studio recording of it, which in some cases I think might make it feel a little bit worse, or it might be to the detriment of the movie. I think that scenes like this, and for a lot of this movie, that works so well, because here's what you can't do when you're singing from a recorded track. You cannot base your performance on the emotion you are feeling in that moment. You can't base your performance on what's happening, like what you feel and what's happening around you. You can only you can only really do it based on what the vocals sound like when you are doing the scene. And when you're in the studio doing it is a completely different animal than when you are actually acting it on stage or on screen. So I think that actually makes this performance incredible, because, and this is going to be controversial and I don't care, the greatest moment in movie musical history, the greatest performance I've ever seen in movie musical history, is the 1 second of film when she says, "He took my childhood in his stride." If you've never seen it, go watch the movie. It's better in context of the whole thing, but if you need to, go watch the whole musical number. If that's the only way you'll do it, go watch her do that musical number. When she says, "He took my childhood in his stride," is the greatest moment in movie musical history for me. It is the best delivered line of dialogue, or of best delivered line from a song in a movie musical of all time, in my opinion. She deserved the Oscar for that 1 second of film, let alone the rest of it that I also thought was brilliant. So I'm standing on this rock. She deserved it. I don't care. If you disagree with me, please tell me in the comments. But just know that I care, but I'm not changing my mind. So now that you know that, let me just go over the nominees, who she was up against. She's up against Amy Adams for The Master. Great performance. Sally Field in Lincoln as Mary Todd Lincoln, also a really great performance. Again, up against and in that she was up against probably the greatest actor ever, Daniel Day-Lewis. Helen Hunt for The Sessions, who won on As Good as It Gets. Not my pick for this one, obviously. And Jackie Weaver for Silver Linings Playbook. All great performances that I thought were really, really incredible. It's just Anne Hathaway. She does something in that scene that I think that she absolutely deserved it for that and the rest of her performance. So I'm not going to keep dwelling on this. I just think she deserved it. I also just really quickly want to talk about how the backlash she got for her award, when she got the award, her acceptance speech. I think a lot of times people just want to dislike seeing someone feel emotion. And that's the thing. Like, she had a recent movie, I forget the name of it because I haven't actually seen it yet, but I saw the trailer, and then the trailer, she's like, a woman gets so much, like, I am paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly, but she's just basically saying a woman gets so much for showing any amount of happiness. She gets so much grief for it, or showing emotion. I don't know, whatever she was saying in that. You'll have to go look. I apologize. I should just cut this out, but I'm not. You're seeing it right now. I promise. Which, you know that. I just think she got so much backlash for just having an emotional moment when she was getting her Oscar speech.
It came true. Thank you so much to the Academy for this, and for nominating me with Helen Hunt, Jackie Weaver, Amy Adams, and Sally Field. I look up to you all so much, and it's just been such an honor. Thank you. Thank you for this. Here's hoping that someday in the not too distant future, the misfortunes of Fontaine will only be found in stories and never more in real life. Thank you.
When she was receiving her Oscar, her dream come true, and she mentions how happy she is and how that's been her dream. It's I think that people are far too hard on people during that kind of thing, especially women who show some emotion. She needs to no longer receive that hate for the win and for her acceptance speech. That's all. Thank you. All right, I have to be quick because because I'm running out of time for reals. The last film I'm going to cover is Elmer Gantry from 1960. This won Best Actor for Burt Lancaster and Best Supporting Actress for Shirley Jones. Let's start with Supporting Actress. Shirley Jones. She was up against Glynis Johns for The Sundowners, Shirley Knight for Dark at the Top of the Stairs, Janet Leigh for Psycho, and Mary Yuri for Sons and Lovers. I thought this was a really good performance. I really liked her in this movie. I don't know. The only one of those other ones I've seen is Janet Leigh in Psycho, and I might have given it to that one instead, but I have no problem with Shirley Jones having one. Now let's move on to Burt Lancaster, because let me just tell you who he was up against. He was up against Trevor Howard for Sons and Lovers, Jack Lemmon for The Apartment, which is one of my top 5 favorite movies, Laurence Olivier for The Entertainer, and Spencer Tracy for Inherit the Wind. Some heavy hitters in there. And here's the thing. I expected to come out of this movie upset that Jack Lemmon didn't win for this particular Oscar because of how much I love that movie. But I left feeling like I had just watched the best performance of that decade, probably one of the greatest performances of all time. Burt Lancaster is a powerhouse in this movie. You know, I love the story of a con man, and the charisma required for that often results in a really, really great performance. But the sheer magnetism of Lancaster on screen and Elmer Gantry is really unlike any I've ever seen before. In any other film, the idea that one man singing in a crowd of people who are singing the same song, and then being a blip on their radar would seem far-fetched, but you can actually feel Lancaster's aura through the screen. So it's completely believable that they took notice of him and turned around when he came in the door. It's like they could sense him when they came in the door. That's who Elmer Gantry is. The film itself is very well made, and for its runtime, which is like 2.5 hours, I believe, it flew by. As a formerly religious person, and considering the content warning at the beginning of this movie, I expected and even hoped that this movie would be a more damning satire of revivalism and evangelicalism. And we got some of that, but I could have used a lot more of it, and there probably should have been a lot more of it. But overall, I thought this was a really great movie, and Burt Lancaster is really great. I'm sorry for rushing this at the end. I do have to go, but I just want to mention that our next week we are covering directing Oscar winners, so movies for which the director won the Oscar for Best Director. What are some of your favorite Oscar-winning performances? Are there any Best Director winners that you really love? The movies that they won Best Director for? Talk to me in the comments. Bye.